I'm still, I'm an alcoholic. Yeah, I'm only here by the grace of a God I refuse to believe in or was too fearful to believe in. Good sponsorship, doing meetings, working through these steps to the best of my ability, and most importantly, you guys, most importantly, the fellowship of which, is one of the most important aspects of my life today. So to try and, obviously get through it all and for the purposes of identification, I just want to start off with, kind of how it used to be. So I just growing up, my family was as normal as they come. They were, my dad was hardworking, my mom was doting. I had a little, I had a little sister. Everything was kind of normal in my family. But one of my earliest memories is this crippling fear. When my mom used to drop me off at school, I used to believe she would never fetch me again. And it was odd because my sister, who was 2 years younger than me, she never had that problem. Coupled with that, was the normal like school child stuff. I used to get bullied, and I was always the last guy picked for the team. And I used to wear these big braces and like a headgear and like these massive like Coke bottle glasses. It didn't help with the self-obsession much. So I like that the reading spoke about self-acceptance, because I guess if I have to sum it up, I never accepted myself ever, from as early as I can remember. And when I had my first drink, around about the age of 14, I just remember that being an incredible experience. I was like, it felt like I'd arrived. I was able to breathe a massive sigh of relief, and straight away I drank to blackout. And I had this little friend who was with me, and we had planned this whole thing. We're going to raid my dad's liquor cabinet because my parents had gone out. And I drank to blackout, and he started pouring his drinks out after the second drink because he didn't like the way that it felt, and he didn't like the way that I was acting. And I guess my parents just wrote it off as one of those exploratory moments, I guess. And let his hangover, when he's got a hangover tomorrow, we'll let him deal with it, and that'll be punishment enough. But something had awoken in me that day, which I would only years later would I come to realize that was the removal of this crippling fear that I'd had pretty much for as long as I can remember. If I got to fast forward into my, through my teens, I discovered other substances. Liquor was always, kind of in the back, greasing the wheels. I used to have all the hallmarks of an alcoholic, so I couldn't concentrate, always like depressed and self-obsessed. So for that reason, I was put on medication. Also had actually before I had my first drink, I'd already dabbled in medication, and was on medication regularly. But where things really started to kick off for me was in my late teens, when I discovered stimulants. I kind of, I loved the feeling because, all that self-obsession that I had just disappeared instantly, and I was able to talk. I found, in high school, I was able to chameleonize depending on which group of kids I wanted to hang out with. There was the jocks, there was the nerds, there was the sporty guys, whatever. I would be able to manipulate my way into each group, and especially when I had these substances on my side, that whole process was just easier. So it was a long time, really, before I started experiencing consequences. I guess those would, started in, the first time I got caught by my parents. I had to do a drug test. So Google had just come out, right? Giving away my age. But I Googled how to beat a drug test, and there were results, believe it or not. And I found a way to beat drug tests, and thought I was a freaking genius. But I guess my first consequence was being led off to the rehab to get tested by my dad. And I remember, them at the rehab saying, "Why don't you come in and check it out?" And I was like, "Not a chance, not happening." And that probably happened at the age of 18. Fast forward a few years, and I was starting to experience new substances. I was starting to experience new consequences. One of those was I was a guy who was always in a relationship. I used to like the way relationships made me feel. I never felt whole unless I was in some kind of relationship. And as a result, because of my alcoholism, also when I'm looking for a partner, I literally, wherever the red flags are, I go there, because that's where I find, that was the kind of girl that I wanted to be with in those days. So I used to be a DJ in my time, right, and quite a popular one at that, and I loved that because it meant that these relationships were easy. The self-obsession was easy because I was straight away the tallest guy in the nightclub, because I'm in the DJ box, carrying on, and people would buy you drinks, so there was affirmation, all that stuff, and I loved that. And one of the nights I met a woman who she was easily the drunkest person in this entire nightclub. Obviously, I took her home, and she never left for about 6 or 7 months. And I thought this was great. This is how it's meant to be. We understand each other, one of those. And what happened was she landed up getting pregnant. And I remember being incredibly struck by fear, didn't want to take responsibility for that. And I actually manipulated her to have an abortion. And then I kicked her out. That was kind of how it used to be for me, is I would take what I wanted from you and then carry on just doing whatever it was that I wanted to do. And I think it was about a week later, I had met another girl. And that's kind of just how I would conduct my love life, I guess. By this time, my using had reached a point where I had received a phone call from my mom to say that she was very worried about me. Both my parents were very worried. They tried to get me into rehab. It wasn't happening. Fast forward a few years ahead now, I moved to England for a while. I wanted to get away from my drug of choice. So I thought, cool, well, if I go to England, I'll be able to get away from my drug of choice there. And I went over there and I discovered that I just knew drugs of choice, basically. And I also discovered that I'd taken myself with me. I didn't realize that I was even alcoholic at this point. What I'd run away from kind of manifested there in a different way, with different drugs, different people, more and more liquor, also lots and lots of DJing. Except I reached a point there where I felt suicidal after for the first time in my life. I stood at the end of a tube platform, the London tube, and I thought, well, it would be okay if I just had to take a step off this platform and fall in front of the train. I guess it'll be quick. And, it was the first time that I'd had thoughts like that. It was the first time that I'd had thoughts like that. And, it was kind of new for me. So obviously, because I was in the game of manipulating my parents to get money, I was unable to hold down a job in England. I would phone them constantly for money for rent and groceries and this and that. It was all for drugs. But, obviously I played the whole self-pity game. I told them for the first time that I would be seeking some kind of help for my problem. And it was the first time that I walked into a 12-step meeting in Wimbledon in London. And I wasn't ready for anything that the rooms had to offer me. I went in there, I judged everybody, I looked at the differences, when they spoke about powerlessness and unmanageability, I didn't really believe that. I didn't believe it was a disease. Then they got to the God word and I was like, oh my word, no, I can't do this. But obviously I used my 12-step meeting visits to tell my family that I'm doing something about my problem, which made it a lot easier to get money, right? Because, I guess they, on some level, thought I was doing something about the issue. So one day my dad phoned me up and said, listen, my son, I'm going to help you open a pub. I want you to come back to South Africa and, we want you to come home. We're worried about you. I'm going to start you off in business and it'll be a pub. And I thought, cool, that sounds amazing for an alcoholic like me, who didn't know he was an alcoholic yet. Came back and this business was amazing, and also the start of, I guess, my first rock bottom, because at this place it was a cash business. It became popular quite quickly. I met all kinds of women there. There was just, it was back in my hometown of Benoni, because I've got two problems, and there were drug dealers popping into my business constantly, to obviously service that thing. I was trying to run this business and, I just had chaos. There was a time where I had multiple girlfriends, whatever. It would cause all kinds of problems. By this time, my mom had phoned me to say, my boy, I'm worried that I'm going to get a phone call one day to say that you have died. And I kind of just brushed it off, and I put the phone down as you do, and I carried on. And about a year and a half into owning this pub, this is now my late 20s. It was the first time that I landed up in an inpatient treatment center, where I kind of went in. I was in a big mess. I remember my dad dropping me off, and he was crying, and my mom was crying, and everybody was crying, and I was pretty broken. I had reached the point where, my rock bottom happened because I woke up one day in my house. I used to have this little place. My lounge was full of people that were huffing petrol and stealing my shit. Didn't even know who any of them were. That and, my drug of choice at this point in time had escalated to the point that I couldn't even use it without getting these horrible panic attacks. And I used to sit there trying to take my pulse. And, I don't know if anyone who takes stimulants identifies, but, like when you think every breath is going to be your last, and you sit like that for like hours and hours and hours and hours. I'd done a couple of hospital trips already, where I suspected I was overdosing. So I would believe that I'm having a heart attack, yet I'm able to drive myself all the way to the hospital, give them my medical aid card, insist that I get put on like medication right now, you know what I mean? And I'm like, I'm dying, can't you see I've got a heart attack going on here? So things had started to escalate. And I went into this inpatient treatment center, but I kind of just went in for the 6-week executive package, to which I was introduced to the steps again. I liked what I heard, but some words stick out for me because one of the counselors there said, "Listen, Stel, you have a girlfriend, and in fact, there's other girls. There were 3 girls phoning me in that rehab. So you have a girlfriend, Stel. You have a BMW in the driveway. You still have your business. You've had no consequences. So I don't think it's going to end well." And obviously, when I heard that, I thought, well, stuff you. I'm going to go out. I'm going to show you that I'm going to be fine, and I'm going to do the 90-90, and I'm going to get a sponsor, and I'm going to do it on my own. And I attempted that to the best of my ability. I guess when I left there, I did. That was really my motive. That was really my intent. But I straight away went back to work at the pub. I straight away went into a relationship, and I think I made it up to day 45 of the 90-90, and then on day 60, I had a drink. And what happened thereafter was I got into a relationship with the one girl who was phoning me there. She actually helped me clean up for a while because I fixed so much off that relationship. It was almost like I was able to use less. And I found that, in certain situations, especially around her family and my family, I was able to just control my drinking a little bit. You know what I mean? I'd really keep it together here and there. Like, it's almost like the days of the past were gone. During this relationship, also, like, just on that point, once the infatuation period had kind of lessened, I found that I was doing stuff like picking fights with her so that I could get time off so that I could use. Okay, so that started happening. I found that I was disagreeing with her family more and more. I found that I was unpleasant to be around, or at least that's what people said, kind of towards the end of that relationship. Her family, even my family, would say stuff like, "Listen, can you please just have a drink?" She would say to me, "Please just go smoke a joint. Please just do something because you're miserable." I had an aunt, okay, who kind of in the middle of this relationship, and this is kind of getting towards the end. What had happened from me taking a drink at 14 was now pretty much every weekend was my drug of choice. Every day was another drug of choice. I was on medication 24/7. I was using basically all the time. My aunt died, and I remember, it was quite a stand-up moment for me because she was a very God-fearing woman, never said the Lord's name in vain, and I remember being very angry with God in that moment for taking my aunt, because she had this car accident, she was in a coma. Her and her 3 daughters and I would stand around her bed in hospital, and her daughters would be praying, and I would stand there like mocking God. I'd be like, "God, like, if you're so mean, why don't you come down here and take me and like leave my aunt out of it?" why would you do this, blah, blah, blah. And when she died, she was in a coma for a short while, then I really used that as an excuse to go balls to the wall using, and it took me from that point about 18 months where I lost a girlfriend, I crashed my car, I had gone up a level in my drugs of choice. I used to walk around with the crystals of the drugs that I was using all over my face. I mean, that's kind of the point of humiliation I had gotten to, and getting into physical altercations with my dad. It reached a point where my mom and my dad were actually too scared to come to my house. It was my mom's partner who would go there to see if I was still alive, and my dad's partner. They were recently here for a visit, and we were laughing because she actually said, your dad didn't want to know. Your dad didn't actually want to know what you were up to, and I insisted. I actually climbed over your wall. She fell over the wall, and she was taking photos of paraphernalia in my lounge. I only heard this last weekend, by the way. So no wonder my dad knew. And there was just this overall picture of chaos in my life, and everything was coming apart. I'd lost the business. Obviously, I was forced to sell the pub, and I couldn't afford to put petrol in the car, couldn't afford to put electricity in the little thing, and I cheated on the girl, and she left me. And one day I woke up and I was, my drug dealer was my only friend. The drug of choice that I was taking meant I hallucinated a lot, auditory hallucinations. It was horrible. And at some point, my parents had got in touch with a treatment facility, and the treatment facility advised them on what to do, and kind of, I guess there was plans for court sectioning happening in the background, which I never knew about. But my mom came and sat down with me I think it was a Tuesday, and said, "My boy, listen, you got to go into treatment while you still have the dignity to do so." And I don't know what shifted for me then, but I believe I had hit step one in the week previous. I don't think you can work step one. I think it's something that happens internally, and I was finished. I was suicidal. I was miserable. It's the loneliest place on earth, and I think everybody knows what that feels like. And I said to my mom, "I'll go," and I kind of used all the way up to the airport, flew down here, almost missed my flight. It was quite remarkable. I couldn't even get 50 Rand out of my parents for the airport. I was like, come on. You know what I mean? Obviously, I wanted to go have a drink or something, but they couldn't trust me with anything, nothing at all. So came down here. I went into an inpatient treatment facility in the hillside, and what happened then was this incredible. I don't know. I was ready. I was ready to listen for the first time in my life. And things were making sense. I'd kind of dabbled in the steps through meetings before, and I'd kind of dabbled in the steps, in the previous treatment center. But what I can say about where I went to treatment, it being a hardcore 12-step treatment center, was that everything just kind of made sense. I remember sitting and writing down my step one, and that reduced me to tears, because once it was all down on paper, I was like, wow, I can't believe that I've become this person. It was weird, it was almost like sitting back in school, being given a pen and like some paper and being told, this, you need to write some shit out. Like, it was awesome, and it was scary, and I also cried a lot during that process. It was the first time that I had this, I guess, emotion coming back. And I sat down there and I learned more about myself using this program than I've ever had in the past. Specifically when I think around my step 4, where we do a fearless and searching moral inventory. When I had an opportunity to sit down and do a step 5 with somebody, something which I'd never done. I'd never done that. I approached that step 5 with a lot of fear, preconceived ideas that I was going to be judged or have the cops called on me, or I'm the worst addict alcoholic in the world. Like, who will not judge me for owning all this stuff? And what I learned about myself during that process was just something that, I don't know, but for me, that was the start of my spiritual awakening, was what happened right there in that step 5. I kind of completed treatment there with a willingness, I guess. And I had lots of suggestions that I had to follow. Some that stick out were, I was told early on I need to sell the BMW. And I didn't like it. I thought, my counselor must be jealous of my car. That's what it's about. Why would I sell my car? But anyway, I went counselor shopping in the treatment center. So I went to another counselor to ask like what they thought about this guy's idea, because surely that idea is not okay. And before my sentence had even left my mouth, I got the same feedback. No, listen, if that's what your counselor is saying, that's what you got to do. And I guess the difference to how I used to be before is instead of kicking off and being defiant, I picked up the phone, I phoned my dad, and I said, listen, I want to sell the car. There's no number plates on the car. I keep crashing the car. I've picked up so many drugs in the car, whatever, just sell it. And I remember that being even though I was at the point of suicide, my attachment to the idea of who I was in that car was bigger than anything, I guess. I kind of followed that. I stayed in treatment, although I don't know how my parents wangled this, but I went for 3 months straight. I didn't even get that option. Most people come in and they like fight and argue about 21, 28 days, whatever. I didn't even have that option. But my one came when it became time to do a fourth month, kind of in treatment, it didn't really gel with me. I wanted to go back to Benoni and stalk my ex, obviously. Hence, I had things that I needed to work through, right? My sponsor at the time could see that. And I became willing, and I did that. And, then after that, another suggestion followed where it was to move down to Scottsboro, and not go back, rush off back to Benoni where my life would be nothing but unmanageable chaos for a long time, you know. And I found that through following the suggestions that, things were happening that I couldn't otherwise account for, awesome things. Just to backtrack a little bit, I really struggled with the God concept, right? So I would be agnostic or atheist depending on who I was arguing with in the pub or like at my pub or whatever, you know what I mean? I used to just know something about everything. And obviously this perception had to be challenged while I was in treatment and around about step 3. And we used to have a guy who would talk in the mornings. And I remember asking him, like, how do I've never believed in God. How am I going to do this? How do I do that? I mean, I guess I believed in God, when I was in preschool or thereabouts, but how do I do it now? And he said, all you got to do is be willing to believe. And you know what? Willingness was something that I could do. And I said, okay, cool. And how do I be willing? He says, well, you got to get down on your knees every morning and pray. And I said, well, what must I pray to? And he said, pray to the fucking mattress for all I care. Just do what I say if you want to get what I have. And it was simple enough for a very complicated alcoholic like me to kind of do. And like, even before the share, I must have got down on my knees like 4 times in the bathroom right here. Because I do that when I'm in fear. It's become like kind of part of my life today. And although it was another suggestion that although it made no sense at the time, it's a part of my life today. It's a part of why I get to live in this program. So my belief of God, kind of changed. I mean, and it does change, because that's one thing I love about this program is we get our own personal God. Like, that's so cool. Like, it doesn't have to be any particular God or a religious God or whatever. It's my own personal God, a higher power of my own understanding. And I love that. And for that reason, my concept of a higher power changes, depending on, it's usually between the ocean and between the universe. Because I know that when I try and conceive of just the enormity of either of those things, it's definitely bigger than what I am. But in treatment, when I was struggling with that concept, I remember asking my counselor as well and saying, like, how do I start with this God thing? And he offered practical advice was, maybe it's just a group. Maybe your higher power right now is the group, that you're going through this journey with. And that has been my understanding of the fellowship up until today, is we're all on this wonderful journey together, with its highs and its lows. And it's just, I don't know, for alcoholics to be able to do that, it boggles my mind. So yeah, I finished treatment. One of the things I had to do was move down to Scottsboro, get a simple job. And that came with a lot of growth, because, I thought that I am like a very distinguished IT technician, okay, and I should get a job accordingly here in Scottsboro. till you actually start looking for jobs in Scotborough and you realize, generally what you want is not available. So I got this job at this little guest house where, I was trying to, I did fix she only had one computer, so I fixed it in like a day. And then I fixed the website, and then I had to do all kinds of other work, like, I had to mop floors, I had to be a waiter, I had to pick up pizza, deliver pizza for her clients, that would come into this little hotel. And quite quickly, something I learned about myself in my step 5 is I had these defects of character, of which arrogance and grandiosity is one. So within 2 weeks of working at this place, I'm like, I'm going to be at the head of vast enterprises of B&Bs one day. As long as these people listen to what I say and how this place should run, everything's going to be okay. And then I kind of went off on this tangent where I was walking around this business, pointing out this, and this needs to change, the dustbins need to be put over there, and, the staff's not picking up the litter over there. And this woman turned around and looked at me and she said, please just get on with your job. I don't pay you for this. Okay, thanks very much. And I remember, the reading talks about humility. I've been confused about what humility is, and I guess as much as my active alcoholism humbled me or humiliated me, I've had many moments like that in my recovery as well, where I've had to backtrack and look at myself and remember my defects of character, for my step 5, and try and work step 6 and 7 around that. Anyway, they used to say your first job in recovery or your first year in recovery is not a career move. I eventually left that place and I went to work at a dive center where I had some of the most incredible experiences in my life. When I left treatment, I had this I was on a pink cloud for years. The first year of my recovery was the best year of my life. I would literally go down to Scotborough Beach and look at the sunrise, and I'd be like, oh my God, look at that fucking sunrise, and look at that flower, and look at that bush, and look at that wave, and look at that rock. Everything was just amazing. And I kind of tackled life, with a new hunger and a serenity that I've never experienced before. My parents were over the moon. My family was over the moon. They could see a lot of change. And most importantly, I was dedicated to this. I was dedicated to AA and the 12 steps and trying to be of service to others and kind of being a part of the fellowship. So anyway, I started working at this dive center where I had the opportunity to be a skivvy. So I was cleaning boats and doing all these things. And as a result, I would be able to go diving. And I wasn't even charged anything for this, for all the dives that I did. And when I kind of went into the ocean for the first time, I remember all these incredible experiences, where I saw whales and dolphins and, massive sharks and stingrays and all this, this world that I never knew was possible. I actually reflected at the time when I was in treatment, because the treatment center's up on the hill. You're able to see the ocean from the treatment center in 4 different parts of the long walk that you do every morning. And I remember doing that long walk every morning, and I used to look out at the ocean, and I used to think, one day I'm going to be in that. I don't know how, don't know what I'm going to be doing, but I'm going to be doing that. And these days, every time I go out for a dive, I'm able to look at where the treatment center is up on the hill, and I think, and I'm immediately filled with gratitude every single time, because that and so many other promises have kind of come true. One of my favorite pastimes today is taking newcomers to the program on a boat, and we go and we snorkel, and we snorkel with sharks sometimes and all this stuff. And it sounds like a bad joke, right? 12 addicts get on a boat and go out to sea, but it's a wonderful experience. And if I think about that misery that I came from, where I used to live in a room where I used to close a door and roll a tile up, put that there so I can eliminate that light. Then I'll take some tape and I'll cover the keyhole, and then I have to draw the curtains closed and close all the windows because I can't hear a sound from outside, living in this horrible paranoia. That's the world that I come from. The world that I come from, I hurt people around me constantly. I would say, kind of since I've had my sobriety, or this gift of sobriety, I do way less hurting. You know what I'm saying? I'm able to do things that I never thought was possible. I've held a job down now for 4.5 years. After the dive center, I had an opportunity to go and work in the same treatment facility, kind of as a volunteer. And I remember this incredible excitement, and it's the same excitement that I get today. I mean, even today when I drive up there and I see the gate, every single morning of my life, I love what I do, right? And I've never been able to say that I can do that, because I've spent the bulk of my life hating everything. Other things that have happened in my recovery, which are just, incredible. So it took me a while to, I don't know if anyone's got a sister or brother yet, but they got our number, right? They don't take our nonsense. I don't know if you guys noticed that. It's very easy to get mom and dad back on board, but if you've got a sibling, it took me a long time to win the trust of my sister. And how I did that was I got the dreaded suggestion that you have to stay out of relationships for a year. And I remember being angry at the time and thinking, oh, why would they take, they've taken my sex and my drugs. I mean, my drugs and alcohol. Nah, I can't hook up. Like, what the hell's that about? But I followed it anyway, because I know that my thinking doesn't work. I knew that. And then my year came, and then I had no dates, so I just left it carrying on for a while. But the unintended benefit of following that suggestion was one day my sister phoned my mom and said, Mom, I know my brother's changed because he doesn't have some floozy on his arm that's 10 years younger than him. He's not in some faulty relationship with someone he's met for 5 minutes. And therefore, like, the amends to my sister came in the form of a suggestion I didn't even know was going to be linked. A standout thing that happened for me was around about my 18th month mark. My sister got married, and I got invited to be a groomsman and to do a speech. And I panicked for 2 reasons, because the thought of doing a speech sober was just beyond me, okay? But the other thing was I knew so little about my sister and her partner that I had to spend 3 solid days with them before the wedding, so I could learn as much about them and their relationship dynamics as I possibly could, so that I could write a decent speech. I mean, that's how sad it was, really, because I spent the last 15 years bullying my sister, hating her, you know what I mean, for no reason whatsoever. I just realized I've done a whole share, and I haven't even mentioned the word resentment yet, you know what I mean? But resentments used to rule my life, you know what I'm saying? It was the most... I just found no way out other than using this program. And at some point, my sister, she got married. I did the speech. She had a little nephew, my little nephew Connor, and I remember going over there to visit her, because she lives in England, and she let me hold her baby boy. And I thought, this was incredible, because as I looked into this little kid's eyes, I thought, I will love you no matter what happens. I mean, I'm not a parent, so I can only imagine how much stronger that feeling would be for a parent. But just the fact that my sister would trust me to hold her son and spend time with him was an incredible gift of this program. And in order to stay plugged in, wherever I am in the world, and I've only been overseas to London in my time that I've been in recovery, but I went to a meeting every second day. And I go and I find 12-step meetings in my area, and I go and I share, and I'm a part of, because I know that wherever I go in the world, I can be a part of this, and I love that about this fellowship. I've eventually met somebody in recovery, and I did things the right way, where I phoned my sponsor, and I think she was attracted to me first, and I phoned my sponsor and I said, listen, I think I want to go out for like on a date or something, and we did things the right way, because like I said to you earlier, like the way I used to do relationships was I used to follow the red flags. Now I'm phoning somebody to say, listen, what would you think if I went out for coffee with this person, and I kind of got the go-ahead, and I think she got the go-ahead from her sponsor, because she's also in the fellowship, and we went on an actual coffee date where we just had coffee and we chatted, you know what I mean, and I realized, that's generally how people meet. And after a couple of coffee dates, then I remember we walked on Scottsboro Beach, and today was the day that we were going to hold hands. You know what I mean? I knew it. I planned the whole thing. And like, it took me so long to like hold her hand. I'm like 34 years old, yeah. You know what I mean? And I'm like a little boy in like Standard 5 or some shit, like at the disco. So excited, and until like, what? And how's she going to react? And then I just did it. And like kind of we've been yeah, we fiancés today. Earlier this year, I had the incredible pleasure of getting down on one knee for this woman, because that kind of all happened at around about the 18th month mark of my recovery. Uh, but we've been together for a number of years, 4.5 years. Yes, 4.5 years. And the ring that she wears on her finger has been made by somebody in the fellowship. When we had our engagement little photo shoot, whatever, the photos were taken by someone in the fellowship. It's an incredible testament to kind of when I can use this program to remove or at least become aware of the defects which run my life and have a way to change and amend my behavior as a result on a daily basis to the best of my ability. The gifts are just innumerable and they're amazing. And I remember sitting in treatment and one of the counselors would say, you just got to do this because you'll be amazed before you're halfway through. And that has been my experience. And yeah, I still have bouts of arrogance. Like I wanted to propose to her in Stellenbosch because it had the first half of my name in it. And anyway, I went with the 12 apostles because of the 12 steps, right? So I guess that's better. Anyway, so I have these moments of madness, which it's okay. You know what I mean? It's okay. For the most part, like today, life is just completely different. I was listening to one of our peers' shares from a couple of weeks ago, in which he said that he's achieved a level of serenity that he never thought was possible. And although I can be absolutely mad, I must agree that this program is the only place that I've been able, to kind of find this stuff, and it hasn't been without its difficulties. I've seen a lot of people pass away over the years. Every year somebody's passed away. For various reasons, whether it be a relapse or an inability, I guess, to get the program to work for them. Just this year, there was a woman who I used to date many years ago, and although that relationship was long gone, I maintained a friendship with her, and I always just thought she was going to one day pick up the phone and say, listen, Stel, because every year, when I put my photo up on Facebook, I'll do that, right? Because I'm not in Benoni anymore, but there's lots of people there who, I guess my motive is to carry a message, who will look at that picture and think, well, if Stel can do it, so can I. And every year she used to say to me, you're looking good. How did you do it? And I'll tell her exactly how I did it. And I hope that one day, she would just pick up the phone and say, right, I'm ready to do it as you did and come and do treatment and just get better. And yeah, she hung herself, about 4 months ago. And, she never got the chance that I've been given today. And there's been lots of moments like that, where it's genuinely sad and where I get to count my blessings. Because of that spiritual principle of willingness and honesty, I guess. I don't know what it is. There's been other difficulties. I mean, if I just think about the last 2 years, with COVID and the riots that happened earlier this year, I mean, that was like some serious tests of my faith, because eventually your pink cloud, if you ever get on it, will run out. And mine ran out when COVID hit, and I remember being in an intense state of fear. I lost my sense of humor. I still sanitize everything. If you guys hang around me long enough, you'll see I do that. But I was doubting my faith. I was doubting my faith in this program. I was doubting my faith in God. I was doubting everything. I mean, my dad got very sick with COVID, very sick. And this was my worst nightmare. Because I don't know if you remember back in your step work, you answered that question, what is that one thing you think you'll never get through sober? And that was it, like the death of my mom or dad was there. And here it was, where he'd been hospitalized and we were out of control. And I was trying to control. I phoned my doctor here to get him a prescription over there, which I was then phoning his girlfriend to go pick up the prescription to go give to him. I was ordering oxygen machines for the guy. I was like trying to control everything, because when I get in a mess, I try and control things. And it was an awful time where it was touch and go, where we were told, listen, you need to pray for your dad now. and hopefully he's going to make it. And thank goodness he did. Even if he didn't, I know because I've seen people get through that experience in this program and be okay. So either way, like this program is my safety net. This fellowship is my safety net. When the riots, kind of happened, it was also moments of abject fear, which I've never experienced. Lots and lots of anxiety. And, I remember we sat doing a patrol here in Pennington because we went and stood guard at the entrance of this community, and my friends and I who are in the fellowship sat and did an AA meeting in my car, for an hour while we sat there, we didn't know exactly what was going to happen, if there was going to be chaos, but we sat there and I guess to the best of my ability, I tried to put this program first, because everything, that I kind of have today is as a result of this. The gifts of recovery and the promises, they've come true for me for the most part. It doesn't mean that I'm not sometimes ravished with fear. I do get that. And I have a sponsor today who I pick up the phone and I phone when I'm going through stuff. I've had to do inventories in my recovery. I've had to do many step forwards in my recovery because this process never ends. And this disease is this illness is progressive. I do my best today to kind of give my sponsor my madness and present the most normal version of me that I possibly can to the world. For that and for this program, I'm incredibly grateful. So yeah, I'm going to leave it there. Thanks for letting me share.